This episode is brought to you by Netflix. From the creator of Homeland, Claire Danes and Matthew Rhys star in the new Netflix series, The Beast in Me, as ruthless rivals whose shared darkness will set them on a collision course with fatal consequences. The Beast in Me is a riveting psychological cat and mouse story about guilt, justice, and doubt. You will not want to miss this. The Beast in Me is now playing only on Netflix.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the No Huddle Show, our Philadelphia Eagles podcast for NJ.com. This is Cayden Steele, and joining me today was MLive's Detroit Lions beat reporter, Benjamin Raven. I thought it would be great to get Benjamin on for about a half an hour to discuss things from the Detroit perspective, about how Dan Campbell's taken over as the play caller, about how the offense is finally finding its rhythm, how the defense is really ascending under Kelvin Shepard, and the whole NFC picture and what this game means between the Eagles and Lions on Sunday night at Lincoln Financial Field. It could be an NFC Championship preview. It could have been the NFC Championship last year if it wasn't for injuries on the Lions side of things. So it's going to be a fun one, and I was glad Benjamin was able to join us today. But first, this episode is brought to you by Penco Tech. With two convenient campuses in Blackwood, New Jersey and in Bristol, Pennsylvania, Penco Tech has provided comprehensive hands-on career training for more than 50 years, featuring programs in HVAC, electrical, plumbing, automotive technology, and more. With dedicated instructors and career placement assistants, Penco Tech can give you the skills and confidence to build a brighter future. Financial aid is available to those who qualify. Learn more and take the first step by going to pencotech.edu. With that, let's bring in our guest for today, Michigan Live's Lions beat reporter, Benjamin Raven. How are you doing today, Benjamin? And first, before we really break down this Eagles-Lions Sunday night football game, tell everyone a little bit about yourself and where they can find you.
Yeah, sounds good. A little about myself, Ben Raven, as you said there. I've been working at MLive for, 13 years now. I'm in my 7th season covering the Lions. You can't see it, but I am a giant man behind this microphone, 6'6", 260 pounds. Got some right tackle reps left in me, but no, man, I'm a Central Michigan University graduate in the final semester of my grad school at Newhouse right now. Used to be a professional wrestler and announcer in Canada, but I've been doing what I love, covering these Lions for the last, since Matt Patricia took over here in Detroit. So it's I've seen it all. I've seen the seller, and then I've seen the rise kind of to the top of the NFC here.
Yeah, and it's cool to have you on today. You mentioned that. Let's look forward to this game because last year, this was supposed to be the NFC Championship game. It was the one that was the most predicted going into the playoffs. We saw what happened with the Lions with the defensive injuries really derailing their season. They lost in the divisional round to the Commanders. But now we can kind of see like maybe how this game would have finally played out. I know the rosters are a little different than last year at certain positions for both teams. And I'm not sure if both teams are as strong as they were maybe at the end of last year when they were really peaking. But what is your early expectations for this, what should have been or what could have been the NFC Championship last year in this heavyweight matchup that we finally get to see on Sunday night at Lincoln Financial Field?
The Eagles, the class of the NFC. So, last year I was really looking forward to, this is the one. You said it best. We had this one circled as like, yep, that's the matchup. It's got to be the matchup. Kind of similar feelings this year too. But yeah, like you said, some things have changed. Some hiccups have occurred. Both teams probably not exactly where they'd like to be right now, but still, right at the top of the mix. This matchup, it's a huge game for playoff positioning. It's a huge game for winning division titles and all that. It is. The main thing for me is just the biggest thing that's changed in Detroit is obviously the coordinators, but also the interior offensive line. And having a new look, banged up interior offensive line against the Eagles is not exactly great. I know there's been some inconsistencies at wide receiver this year for the Eagles, but the Lions are banged up in the secondary once again. Terrion Arnold's in concussion protocol. DJ Reed just got back to practice today. So I always say about the Eagles, they are the team when I'm looking on paper that are built the best to give these Lions fits. And especially right now going into this matchup where the Lions are a little weak or they're figuring things out, I just look and it's like, crap, this is a really tough matchup. Those Eagles, they are built. They are built top to bottom. Like it's the toughest matchup in the league for these Lions, I believe. I still believe that.
From before we like dive into the specifics of like strengths and weaknesses for
Yeah.
both teams in this specific matchup, from an emotional standpoint or even from like a mental perspective, knowing where the Lions thought they were going last year, they thought they were going on a Super Bowl run. The injuries got in the way.
Mhm.
Is this game extra meaningful to them in any way? I saw Dan Campbell, a local sports radio in Detroit, this week talking about this being a heavyweight matchup. Um, is this game just a little more because of the Lions thinking, hey, if we stayed healthy, like we could have been the team in the NFC last year? Is there that thought in Detroit right now?
I don't think it's about last year because, I mean, shoot, they played the Commanders last week, the team that beat them, sent them home in the playoffs, and they really didn't make it about that. Like, there were some guys saying, like, hey, listen, if you need a little extra motivation, sure, go for it. And I think that would be the same case here. But right here, right now, this season, I mean, Dan Campbell does not tell a lie. He believes when he says heavyweight matchup, that is a barometer test for his team. That is a barometer test for him as a play caller, one game back into the mix for the first time since 2021. And it's a chance to see where his team truly stacks up against a high quality opponent, the type of opponent they'll see in the playoffs. And they do. They take these NFC matchups seriously. They put a lot of pride in themselves in these matchups, whether it's the division or not. And I mean, it's a chance to see, all right, where we at? I mean, truly, that's how they're looking at this. Like, all right, where are we? Because we know who those Eagles are. We know what they've done the last 2 or 3 years. How do we compare? And I think that's what they missed on last year. But this year, it comes at just the perfect time because the Lions are feeling good. They're fired up. They're rallying around their head coach, taking on more responsibility and accountability. And I mean, they really do just feed into Campbell. And if he's saying this is a heavyweight matchup, that is going to be the selling all week long here in Allen Park, Michigan. It's just, guys, every game means something, but this one means just a tick more, not just because it's the next one, but because of who it is, prime time, on the road, at a hectic place to play like Philadelphia.
Yeah, and for the Eagles, I think it's the same thought process, maybe a little different. If you look at their schedule, just from the NFC teams that they play throughout the rest of the year, this is really the last significant challenge for one seed implications. I mean, if they can win this game at home in Detroit after beating Green Bay on Monday night, then they have to play Dallas and Chicago and the Raiders and the Commanders twice, who the Lions just beat up on this past Sunday. The schedule looks fairly easy besides Buffalo at the end of the season. So if they can beat Detroit, this could be the game where they take a hold and go on a run for the one seed. And I'd imagine it's similar for Detroit. They need to win this game, especially with the Rams and the Seahawks. And the NFC is really stacked this year, and there's a lot of teams in mix for the one seed. And honestly, whoever wins this game could ultimately have home field advantage in the playoffs. I know Detroit got home field last year, so I'm excited to see this matchup, and I'm excited. We talked about it before we hopped on to see what this Lions offense looks like in person. I've always admired just the way that it looked under Ben Johnson with all the different weapons that they've had with Sam Laporta and the two running backs and Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery. The great offensive line. I know that Frank Ragnow's not there this year, but still have pretty good tackles. But Dan Campbell has taken over as the play caller his first game back. They put up 44 points against the Commanders. One, why did the Lions decide to go to Dan Campbell? And what can the Eagles expect, or the fans can expect, from what this Detroit offense will look like with Dan Campbell on Sunday night?
Yeah, Dan Campbell made the switch. I mean, he put it pretty simply. Like, I know what I want to do. I know how I want to do it. Sometimes it's hard to crawl inside of my head and to know what I'm thinking. And he takes so much pride. He is an offensive coach. Like, he gets framed around the league as this motivator, meathead type. But this is literally an offensive disciple of Sean Payton. This is someone who called the plays back in 2021 when the Lions started turning the corner. This is someone who equipped Ben Johnson with his aggressive tendencies and just the open collaboration to really let Johnson evolve that offense and take it to the next levels. But yeah, the main things that changed with Campbell as play caller last week were was a heavier mix of Montgomery and Gibbs. With Morton calling the plays, it was a lot of Gibbs. Montgomery kind of acting as an afterthought. Guys like Khalif Raymond and Sam Laporta sometimes felt like more like decoys instead of passing threats. They were heavily involved last week. There was more play action. There was less shotgun. There was more six offensive linemen on the field. And Like, I know everybody was like, oh, the reading glasses gave it away. The play against the Commanders that gave it away, that Campbell was calling the plays, is when 6'7", 320-pound backup offensive tackle Dan Skipper ran a route like he has in the past. And I was like, all right, there's just little slivers of creativity. They're aggressive as heck on third down. They really do just treat third down as another down to get to a more manageable fourth down. I mean, with Dan Campbell calling the plays, you're going to see more second and third down plays playing into the idea of let's make a fourth and manageable because screw kicking, we're going to go for it. So they just made the switch because there was a lack of explosion. There was a lack of consistency in the running game. Jameson Williams was not involved to the way that anybody wanted him to be involved with. That was something that Morton talked about a lot, but there felt like there was a disconnect. There felt like there was a lack of rhythm. They were struggling mightily on third down. And just Dan looked at it and said, I'm having a hard time explaining this, so I'm just going to take it over and put this veteran coach kind of back into an auxiliary supporting role. And hey, I know it was the Commanders, but 200 plus yards of rushing, 300 plus passing yards, no turnovers, no punts, scored on all 8 possessions. We're aggressive on third and fourth down, and you're just going to see a little bit more of that because if you can get the running game going and if you can get Goff hitting the play action, and you can be aggressive as you want because if St. Brown's not open, Jamo's going to get open. And if either of those guys aren't getting open, LaPorte is going to get open or Gibbs is going to make some noise out of the backfield. Just the reigning offensive player of the week in the NFC. I mean, what he's doing when he gets in a rhythm and get going is truly special. And there were just too many weapons. They just, I know they were the second highest scoring offense under Morton, but they were like 26th or 27th on third down. And it just, Campbell saw a way to fix things and he didn't think it could get done by just continuing to talk about it and work through it. So he grabbed the headset, he grabbed his glasses, and he grabbed his play sheet, and so far so good.
Benjamin, I bet there's people here in Philadelphia right now that wish the Eagles would do the same, that Nick Sirianni would do the same, or whether that's him calling the plays or giving it to someone else, because Kevin Patula is the least popular man probably in the entire city right now. You talk about all the weapons in Detroit that we're getting underutilized. You have A.J. Brown
Yeah.
going on a Twitch stream today saying it's a bleak show all year with cryptic tweets. You have just frustration throughout the offense. Saquon Barkley just not getting going other than one game this year. Only one game over 100 yards for Saquon Barkley this year. So I respect what Dan Campbell did with that decision, and maybe the Eagles eventually have to go down that route as well if they don't want to run into trouble in the playoffs and their offense becomes too stale and too predictable like the way it looks right now. But the offense, for the Eagles obviously has some things to work through, but the part of Sunday's game I'm most excited to watch, and it has to do with Detroit's offense, is Detroit's offense picking up, where maybe they left off with Ben Johnson, with Dan Campbell taking over, the offense just being better, reaching the potential of those skill players that are over in Detroit versus an Eagles defense that has been more inconsistent this year. They're not the elite unit that they were when they won the Super Bowl against Kansas City, and they dominated Kansas City in that game, but they're starting to get closer back to that point. I know Green Bay's offense has some issues. Jordan Love didn't play particularly well. They didn't have Tucker Kraft. There's some questions about Matt LaFleur's play calling right now. But at the same time, it's still a solid, Green Bay offense. The Eagles dominated and they set the tone in that game, and they're starting to figure things out defensively. They acquired Jalen Phillips before the trade deadline. In his first game, he got 8 pressures. I started off the game with bull rushing Zach Tom back into Jordan Love, which allowed Jalen Hunt to get a sack. He set the edge really well throughout the entire game, and including on that 4th down stop at the end. That what should have been the end of the game before the Eagles went for it on 4th down. But Jalen Phillips has really made a difference. Cooper DeJean and Quentin Mitchell are peaking into like top tier NFL corners. Like Quentin Mitchell arguably has been one of the best corners in football this year. They got Nakobe Dean back, which really has helped the run defense. He's been outstanding. So you have all this young talent on defense and a great play caller in Vic Fangio. Now going against this offense in Detroit that has so many weapons, they could do so many different things. From your perspective, is that something that you're looking forward to, kind of that chess battle between Fangio and Campbell and all the weapons versus, the pieces that the Eagles have on defense? You mentioned the interior defensive line. That's another thing to watch out for. Jalen Carter versus that banged up interior D-line, Mora Jomo. what's your level of excitement just for seeing this offense defense of battle that would have been great last year as well?
Yeah, no, I'm absolutely psyched about it, and especially with Dan Campbell taking over because I love Vic versus Dan in that regard. And we just saw these Lions get absolutely just out physical and beat to a pulp by the Vikings 2 weeks ago, and it all started not just with the interior defensive line versus Detroit's interior offensive line, but like Brian Flores finding ways to confuse that interior offensive line with the cross-dog blitzes and just sending unrelenting heat up the middle. And with Jalen Phillips looking the way he did last week, I'm just fascinated to see how they approach that defensive front and that front seven, like you said, with Dean coming back, just because Christian Mahogany, the starting left guard, is out. They just put Coyote Awashika in at left guard. Panay Sewell's banged up right now. Taylor Decker's been working through a shoulder issue, the left tackle, since training camp. That's something they're managing. So, like, the offensive line, that's the thing I'm looking forward to the most is how Campbell figures that out, how they battle those blitzes, how they get time Goff to not only stand in the pocket, but they had to abandon the play action against the Vikings because they were getting so much pressure up the middle specifically. And when I look at Davis and I look at Carter and I look at Graham Glasgow, and then you got rookie Tate Ratledge and you got Coyote Awashika, journeyman starting at left guard, and it's like, okay, that's a little concerning in this matchup because not only did the offensive line struggle against the Vikings, Jahmyr Gibbs got beat up bad in blitz protection pickup. He gave up 7 pressures and was credited with giving up 3 sacks. So it's like if you're banking on the running backs to save the day against this Eagles defense, it has a chance to be reminiscent of what happened against the Vikings and just how that interior pressure, how guys were able to get free off the edge and win their one-on-ones, and it just completely that is the game that cost John Morton his play calling duties. Campbell made the decision the day after that game. So that is him looking at the Commanders as a chance. All right, let's get our feet under us and let's go into this Philly game that there's going to be some similarities to that Minnesota game just a little bit based on the matchup problems. How do we handle it? Because if they don't handle the interior pressure, if they don't if they can't contain Phillips, if he's doing what he did on Monday night against the Packers, against the Lions, it could be a tough day at the office for the offense just because the one giant question mark on that offense right now is the offensive line. And that is something that I have not had to worry about or write about the way I have this season for the last 3 years, I'd say. But yeah, there's some banged up guys there. And that's the main reason why this matchup is like, all right, how are they going to handle that? Like, how are they going to handle that? Because Glasgow's kind of had an up and down ride at center. You got a new left guard, you got a rookie right guard still figuring it out, and then your 2 bookend franchise tackles are banged up and just trying to get through the week of practice. So I'm really looking forward to the chess match and how we might see Campbell change what they did against the Vikings to handle some of that, because it was really Gibbs there to save the day and didn't go very well.
Yeah, and before we'll get into the Eagles offense versus the Lions defense in a minute, and it's going to sound similar because
Yeah.
I haven't had written about, at least I've only been on the beat for a couple of years, but it just generally watching for the Eagles from afar, the offensive line hasn't been an issue in a long time. It's an issue now because of injuries. Cam Jurgens has been out. Landon Dickerson's been banged up. He's starting to play better, but he was banged up for a large portion of this year. Lane Johnson suffered an ankle injury in that game. Who knows if he'll be 100%. So it's kind of similar on the Eagles side there. But defensively, yeah, that is a matchup for Detroit that I'd be worried about. It's not just Jalen Carter, but it's Moro Joma as well, who's a smart player, who's able to identify things in the run game. But Jalen Carter is a game wrecker. He can take over at any moment. And if you're moving him over Cody Awashika, who a former Eagle, by the way, started
That's
his
right.
career with the Eagles. It could be a nightmare matchup, though, if they can get pressure on Goff and get him off his spot. And Goff's not the most mobile quarterback in the NFL, and if they can make him uncomfortable and consistently affect him, it could really disrupt things up there as well. And with both the tackles injured, the Eagles all of a sudden have a pretty good edge rush group. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, before the Jalen Phillips trade, I thought it was a weakness, but now they have Jalen Phillips, who is starting to look like the player that he was in 2023 when he was with the Dolphins before he suffered the Achilles and then the ACL the following season. He's starting to get back to what he was, which was one of the better young pass rushers in the NFL. And he's talked about it. This is a new chapter for him. It's a contract year. So now they have a real premier number 1 edge rusher, which I think they were lacking And then now Nolan Smith can kind of kick and be that sidekick as the other starter,
Yeah.
where I think he's still a pretty good player, but I'm not sure if he was like, a top tier edge rusher, but he's still a pretty good player. Now Jalex Hunt's coming on, Josh Uche, Brandon Graham. Now all of a sudden the Eagles defensive line looks closer to what they were in the Super Bowl last year. And that could be bad news for Detroit, but at the same time, there's a ton of talent on this Detroit team. You mentioned them all. All the wide receivers and the tight ends and the running backs and the different things that they can do. The one real weakness on this Eagles defense, or maybe two weaknesses, I think, are Adoree Jackson at corner. He's played better recently, but maybe the Lions can get a advantageous matchup with maybe Jamison Williams on
Yeah.
Adoree Jackson, or and then at the secondary spot, at safety, Drew Makuba. Maybe that's something where Sam Laporta can get some plays in the middle of the field where he gets matched up 1-on-1 with Makuba, and he could take advantage of that. But what's your thoughts on where the Lions can maybe exploit this Eagles defense and have success and put up a lot of points despite going against a very good unit? Where do you think they could maybe have the upper hand potentially?
It is Jamison Williams. It really is. It's Williams in that matchup. If you can get Williams cooking early, they fed and fed him on crossers and crossers and crossers galore last week. If you can go back to that early, then I mean, because JMO is just one of those guys. If he's on the field, you have to account for him. Not just the corner, but the back. You've got to have it shaded. You got to have someone looking deep because he is the fastest player in the league. And when he gets going, he can take the top off of any defense. And then once you're worrying about JMO, you've got two of the best killers underneath in the game in St. Brown, who can do anything, and Laporta, who is just a tailor-made tight end for Jared Goff off the play action on those posts over the middle. He's been cooking up a little lately too. But St. Brown, if you can just use, like, I never want to call JMO a decoy, excuse me. But if you can get JMO cooking early and you get that defense thinking about this ultra fast guy and beating you deep, that just opens things up for St. Brown and Laporta. And once they account for that, you can go back to JMO. You got Montgomery, who's a little more of the power guy, 15 carries for him and 15 carries for Gibbs last week. If you can see, if they can keep that kind of backfield share going like that, they can be a matchup nightmare for anybody, no matter how much talent's on the other side of the defensive ball. But for me, it's Jamison Williams, because if he comes out and he gets going like he did last week, and then all of a sudden you got to worry about JMO, that just makes life easier for guys like St. Brown and Laporta, who are not just starters, but two of the best players in the league at their position we're talking about here. So yeah, I really want to see JMO involved early and often, because that really puts the defense on its toes about what that offense can do. It just opens up the entire playbook for Campbell.
Yeah. I'm curious how the Eagles kind of match it up. They have traveled Quinion Mitchell against different matchups this year. Devontae Adams, Emeka Ibuka, and he's been incredible this year. And with Amara, going into the slot primarily, I wonder if they travel Quinion Mitchell at times against Jamison Williams. They don't do it every single week with Quinion Mitchell. They're kind of selective, but maybe this is a matchup that they decide that that's worth it. But as good as Quinion Mitchell is, there's not a lot of guys that can run with Jamison Williams, and that explosive element is definitely something I think the Eagles have to worry about, and especially when you have a rookie safety back there and Drew Makuba, who's given up some big plays because of missed assignments this year. So if there is, an opportunity where Makuba messes up on an assignment and it's a deep ball or it's a go route and he's not in the right position, and Quinion Mitchell maybe gets, beat over the top, I could see that being problematic for the Eagles. I'm excited to see Cooper DeJean, in those matchups against Amara St. Brown as well. Like, this is such a fun matchup in terms of personnel. Like, there's talent on talent. You mentioned a play caller that probably gets a little disrespected in Dan Campbell versus Vic Fangio, who's been doing it forever. He's one of the best defensive coordinators, arguably in NFL history. I think it's going to be magical on Sunday night watching that. But on the offensive side for the Eagles, I mean, man, things have been ugly for the Eagles this year. There were some bright moments against Minnesota. The passing offense got going. Both AJ and Devontae were over 100 yards. Everyone seemed like that was the turning point. Like, players were happy about the passing offense after that game. Then they got the run game going against the Giants the following week, and the passing game was still good. I was like, hey, like, they're starting to figure it out. Like, it's midseason. things are going to start clicking. And then they go to Green Bay, which, look, I'm going to be one to say Green Bay's defense is awesome. I mean, they're very good. But there's just no excuse for just how poor the passing game looked, how poor the running game looked. They're missing assignments. Saquon Barkley's not being able to break free, really, other than that one nice, spin move when he got into open space. But everything that they do looks so difficult on offense. And you have a star wide receiver in A.J. Brown that is frustrated, and rightfully so, because they are not getting him involved in the offense consistently for whatever reason. They just can't find a way to get him involved. This year in general, he has 54 targets, 31 receptions, 408 yards, and 3 touchdowns.
Yeah.
This is a guy that's been one of the best wide receivers in the NFL for the last 3 or 4 years. And it looks like, this year he's 50th in yards, 61st in receptions, and 45th in touchdowns. So you have an offense that's just not taking advantage of their talent, and the play calling has been inconsistent. It doesn't seem like Campbell has a good feel for things. I don't know if this Eagles offense is going to turn around, and this is a big test for them because if it looks ugly and they lose to Detroit because the offense can't get going, I think there's going to be some panic, at least from the fan base and maybe even internally, where like this thing is not going to get better. Like for whatever reason, they don't have solutions offensively. Detroit's defense well. You mentioned DJ Reed being back at practice today. I just told you how bad the Eagles' offense has been this year, but there is still the talent is there. So, what is your thoughts on that matchup between Detroit, a new defensive coordinator as well? Calvin Shepard, and how he's done, and how you think they'll match up against the Eagles?
Shepard's done an amazing job. He's 37, first time defensive coordinator. He's going to get multiple interview requests for the work he's done. But I will say this. The Eagles offense has been easily the most confusing to watch as an outside bystander this year. And I'll say this, if A.J. Brown doesn't get it going this weekend, isn't a little more involved against this banged up secondary, y'all should be smashing the panic button about what is going on with him, because Reed's not going to play this weekend. Terrion Arnold's a long shot to play this weekend. So you're looking at a matchup against Rock Ya-Sin and 5'9" Amik Robertson as the starting outside cornerbacks. Kirby Joseph hasn't played in 3 straight games, was not back at practice. The all-pro interception king from last year at safety. There's a chance the Lions are without 3 of their top defensive backs. So if that Eagles offense comes out and the passing attack still looks like what it's been, that's a problem, because that is the one area where they should absolutely on paper be able to exploit this defense. But I will say that Detroit defensive front, the front 7, Aiden Hutchinson, complete return to form and then some, got his massive contract, leads the NFL in pressures, gets double teamed, chipped out of the backfield, extra attention every single play he gets. But Aleem McNeil's been back on the field for 3 weeks now, and he is one of the more overlooked, underrated interior defensive line presence in the league. And if McNeil gets cooking, it opens up lanes for Hutchinson. And then you got Jack Campbell, who's playing like potentially the best or one of the 3 best linebackers in the league right now. And you got Barnes and Anzalone on the other sides of him. They are with DJ Reader and Aleem McNeil and Aiden Hutchinson on the line. And then you got the 3 linebackers played every snap, I think, before the starters got pulled last week. The Lions are running a lot of 3 linebackers. They're going to continue to do that too, because Robertson is usually their nickelback. He's been forced to start it outside. So you're going to see a lot of Barnes, Anzalone, and Campbell. The Lions are going to try to win this game with Hutchinson and those linebackers holding things down. But it's a giant question mark in the receiver, cornerback, safety matchups. Obviously Branch is out there. Amik is an underrated guy too, but like, that's a tough matchup. And if Brown comes out of this game and it's still the same things going on, y'all are going to have even more drama, and kind of justifiably so, because that's the one area where I'm looking at this game, including the defensive line versus interior offensive line, as giant red flags for the Lions.
Yeah. The one thing I will say about AJ, anytime in the past few years he's gotten frustrated, maybe not every time, but it feels like almost every time there is like a boiling point where he is just angry and frustrated. He does seem to have like a breakout game. So I don't question the talent of AJ Brown and Devontae Smith and Saquon Barkley and even Jalen Hurts. Like, I still think Hurts has played pretty well this year, and that kind of points the fingers back to the offensive coordinator Kevin Patullo. the Eagles just haven't consistently been able to run the ball this year, and I'm not sure if there is going to be a fix to that because your star center that you gave an extension to this offseason, and Cam Jurgens, has been out with a knee injury. There is no timetable for his return. I mean, there hasn't been given one yet. Brett Toff has started the last 2 games, so there's a clear downgrade on the interior. Lane Johnson's now banged up, like I mentioned earlier, and they just consistently haven't gotten great play
Yeah.
out of their interior all year. And I don't think Jordan Mailata has had his best season. I think he's declined a little bit as well. So it's not the same dominant offensive line. And the passing offense is just not, in rhythm. They play very conservative. They don't take a ton of deep shots. They took that one shot to Devontae Smith that in the Green Bay game for a touchdown, the deep ball that ultimately helped them win that game. But they're conservative by nature. And it's just an uninspiring, uncreative offense right now. And to be honest, it was at points last year. But what they could do is they could really run the ball with Saquon Barkley. Got over 2,000 yards. They just dominated and they dominated and they dominated. And that was their identity. And the passing offense didn't have to be great always. So part of it is scheme. I mean, this is potentially Nick Sirianni's scheme. He's been here, it's still the same guy and the same issues keep happening with the passing offense. So some of it could just be the scheme's just not very good. Some of it also has to fall back on the quarterback, but the Eagles need to find a solution. And I'm curious if they will. Last year, they were able to get through with the run game being dominant and the defense being dominant. This year, I think the defense could be going back to dominant pretty soon, but will the offense get back to being dominant? I'm not sure because the run game's not going to be able to set up the pass right now. And they're really going to need the pass just to be more explosive to finally, set up the run. And neither's really working. But saying all that, the Eagles are still 7-2.
Yeah.
They find a way to win a bunch of games. And I'm being critical of them because they haven't played particularly well, but they're, playing at 60, maybe 70% of what I think their capability is, and they still find a way to win games. But Detroit's a whole different test. Like, I still think Detroit is really, really good, and they haven't been hitting their stride yet. What do you think, Benjamin? I know it's still early in the week. We have some time before we ultimately have to, decide or pick who we think will win the game. But are you comfortable giving a game pick? Who do you think is going to win this game? Is Detroit going to come into Philly and get one on the Eagles and rise to the crop of the NFC for the second straight year?
I do have confidence in the Lions. I don't think this will be a blowout or anything like that, but I do kind of see a loss here, and it's for all the reasons I talked about on the interior line and in the secondary. But like, I could see it. I could see it going. As you ask me a prediction, I'm like, I could see it going 10-7 like the Eagles just played, or I could see it going 35-31 like the Lions played with the Ravens earlier this season. And, talent kind of prevails and talent kind of brings the best out of each other. And hopefully for our sakes, both sides bring it on Sunday night and give us a good, entertaining game. But I am picking the Eagles to win this game, a tight game. I'll even give you a score because I've been kicking around. I'll give you Eagles 24, Lions 20. I think it'll be a great game. I have confidence in the Lions, but I do have a ton of respect for the Eagles, and that is a tough place to go on the road and play. But yeah, I just as you're talking about the Eagles, I had flashbacks to how I was writing about the Lions last week. Like, crap, this team's 6-3. I'm talking like they're 2-7 right now. So it's kind of interesting how similar our timelines are right now. But I do think the Eagles win this one.
I'm so stuck on who I think will win. I'm like I haven't really feel strong about either way. I could see it going either way. There's a part of me that thinks that the Eagles' conservative nature in the passing game, and if that's not able to be more explosive and they're not able to get A.J. Brown involved and things don't look better on offense, that you play a team like Detroit who, no matter how much talent you have on defense, they could beat anyone. So part of me thinks that. Part of me is also like you said, I mean, I'm dissecting the Eagles like they're a bad team, and they're not. They're still a really, really good team. And every time I bet against them or I make a prediction, I'm like, oh, they're going to lose. I typically end up being wrong, especially early in the season. Like I was thinking they're going to lose to the Rams. They're going to lose to the Bucks. They found ways to win those games. They always find a way to win, really. I know they had that rough stretch against the Giants and the Broncos, but it's just tough. But I think it catches up to them finally, Benjamin. I think Detroit comes into Philadelphia.
Wow.
And and they win, I think Detroit has a ton of talent on offense, and they can create some matchup problems with Laporta across the middle of the field. I think they can take advantage of that. The Green Bay didn't have Tucker Kraft last week, so we weren't able to see what that would have looked like in some of those matchups against Green Bay. So I do think Detroit wins. And I don't think that means the Eagles are a bad team. I still think they're going to be a really good team. They're going to be in it to the end, but this is a tough matchup for the Eagles. But the one factor that could change everything is, if Jared Goff doesn't have enough time to throw, and then if that's truly what happens, and the Eagles just dominate the interior, then it could be a rough day for the Detroit's offense. But I think it catches up to the Eagles finally.
Yeah, I love it. We're both picking against the respective team we cover. That kind of speaks to the tough matchup ahead for both of us. I'd say a lot of respect going both ways.
Yeah, it should be a fun game, and I hope you have a safe trip out. And I'm just glad you were able to come on today. But before we wrap up, is there anything else you want to share about this game or anything like that before you hop off and get ready for this week?
Yeah, it's actually first trip to Philadelphia, first time to the stadium, first time to the city. Looking forward to it. But yeah, you can find all my work at MLive.com/Lions. I'm on social medias at Benjamin S. Raven, and we got a little Lions podcast over here called The Dungeon of Doom. If you want to check that out this week, we'll do our mailbag podcast tomorrow. But yeah, that's about it for me. I'm looking forward to it, though. I'm a diehard old school ECW fan, so I'm going to go check out that arena on the south side of Philly before the game on Saturday or Sunday. But yeah, looking forward to the stadium, looking forward to the city for the first time.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on, Benjamin. And thank you for everyone for listening to another episode of the No Huddle Show. We really appreciate it. Keep coming back and keep reading our written content on NJ.com. And if you want to read about the Lions side of things, make sure to go to Michigan Live as well. Thank you for everyone and have a good day.